By the end of this extra chapter, students will be able to
understand the signs of addiction and overdose, analyze how external factors influence behavior, and demonstrate an ability to respond to an overdose. Attached is a think fast activity. Take 30 seconds and have your students provide their definitions for addiction, opioids, and overdose. What is addiction? As a reminder, an addiction is a chronic, relapsing brain disorder characterized by compulsive substance seeking and use despite adverse consequences. Addiction 101. As a brain disease, addiction involves functional changes to the brain, rewiring pathways responsible for reward, stress, and self-control. Feel good, feel better, do better. There are lots of reasons why people start using substances. Substances can make us feel good, can superficially reduce anxiety, stress, and depression, and can increase focus and confidence. So why keep using? The initial decision to take a substance is voluntary. However, over time, self-control can be impaired and it can be difficult not to continue to use a substance. What are opioids? Opioids are anything that come from the opium poppy or anything that is synthetically created and mimics what you would find in a naturally occurring opioid. They are central nervous system depressants, meaning they slow down your central nervous system, including your ability to process sensory information and send out motor signals. As an activity, have students list as many legal and illicit opioids that they can think of. Opioids 101. The US makes up only 4.6% of the world's population, but consumes 80% of its opioids and 99% of the world's hydrocodone. What is an overdose? An overdose occurs when you take too much of a substance and the reaction of the drug is overwhelming the brain. When someone takes too many opioids, the brain is too busy processing the opioid to perform its normal functions. The brain is unable to send the message to tell the body to continue to breathe. An opioid is a respiratory emergency, meaning it affects our ability to breathe and our ability to get oxygen to our brain and other organs. It is important to know that anyone can overdose, whether it's their first time using or they've used for years and years. Overdoses happen as a process, so someone stops breathing. Depending on what the person took, they can overdose minutes later or up to hours later.
State of the state. In the last year, there were more than 107,000 overdose deaths in the US. In Mass alone, there were 2,384 confirmed opioid-related deaths in 2023. This looks like more than 6 people dying each day in our state. The most confusing sign of someone being in an overdose versus someone who is really high is that someone can actually be walking and talking while overdosing, but would be non-responsive to stimulation. For example, they may be walking into walls and would not be able to engage with you in conversation. You don't have to be passed out to be overdosing, which is a common misconception and may lead to an individual not receiving the necessary medical interventions to reverse the overdose. The signs of an overdose are listed here on the screen. The most obvious signs of overdose to be aware of are a blue tint to lips or fingertips. This is a continuum based on a person's complexion. If someone is unresponsive and vomiting, there is no question you need to call 911. An individual overdosing may not experience all of these signs, but it is important to understand and be able to recognize the signs in order to respond immediately and appropriately. Naloxone and harm reduction. Naloxone, otherwise known as Narcan, is an opioid antagonist and reverses an opioid overdose. It acts as a blocker in the brain and displaces opioid receptors. Because of this, a person can re-overdose after being given Narcan. This is just one of the reasons why it is so important to call 911 immediately. It is safe and effective. There are no known allergies, no potential for dependency, and will not cause any harm if the person is not overdosing on opioids. Anyone can carry Narcan. You can get it for free at any local pharmacy. What to do? We will break down each of these steps in more detail, but this is an overview of how to respond in the event of an overdose. Check for signs of an overdose. Look for color, listen for breathing, and note the presence of foam or bubbles around the mouth or vomit. Stimulate the person by calling his or her name loudly and by giving a sternal rub. Call 911. You can say, "My friend is unconscious and not breathing." If the person is unresponsive, give 2 rescue breaths. We do rescue breathing versus CPR when someone is overdosing because they need oxygen in order for their brain to tell their body to keep breathing. An OD is a respiratory emergency, not a cardiac emergency. Administer naloxone. Narcan is a medication that reverses an opioid overdose. Please keep in mind, Narcan is not a substitute for calling for help. If someone was just in an overdose and Narcan worked, they must still seek medical intervention. If you aren't sure that the person overdosing used opioids, still administer Narcan anyways. Stay with the person if you have to leave them alone while waiting for emergency services to arrive. Place the person in the recovery position to reduce the risk of them choking on their own vomit. Exit ticket. Have students respond to this open response question. Why is it important to learn about addiction, overdose, and harm reduction strategies?